Okay, we begin on Daf Yud Tet Amud Bet, 19b1, if you're following in the art scroll. And we are about 3 lines above the Mishnah. Ve'amar Rabbi Chia bar Abba. Rabbi Chia bar Abba said, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. My dichtiv, what does the pasuk mean when it says, Ilmale nishtayeh b'me'ara, if not for the fact that there was a tiny amount, b'me'ara, she'amad ba Moshe ve'Eliyahu, ki melo nekev machat tzidkit. If not for the fact that there wasn't an opening, tiny. When we always talk about this idea of an opening the size of the eye of a needle. I remember once learning with a bunch of guys, and the guy said, "What is the eye of a needle?" And I was like, "Wow, your wife is very shatra. He didn't even know what the eye of a needle was. Every needle at the end of it has a hole in it that you put the thread through, right? So that's called the eye of a needle. It's a very thin space. So if not for the fact that the opening of the cave, where they stood, where Hakadosh Baruch Hu came before them, where are we talking about with Moshe in the Torah? At least you should be familiar with that one. When Moshe says, "Hareni nat kivudecha," show me your honor, and God covers over Moshe's face and passes before him, because he could not see God in that in a frontal view. That would have been too much for him to survive. So God puts him in this nikra tatsur, and as he passes by, covers over his face, and then he sees God as he's passing, as he's retreating.
The tefillin knot, the back of the
yes,
tefillin knot.
Yes, he saw the back of the tefillin. And the Gemara says, if not for the fact that the opening was there, if it would have stayed, lo hayu yicholim la'amod b'pnei orah, no one could have stood or withstood the incredible light that would have been there. Shnei amar ki lo yir'ani ha'adam v'chai, for nobody could see me and live. Now we've already expressed numerous times what this idea means. Simply lo yir'ani ha'adam v'chai means that a person can't live if they see God. And we actually have an idea that backs this up. In the time of Manoach, right? Ray, am I sharing this with you?
Someone that physically sees God? I'm sorry?
In the time of Manoach, it says that Manoach saw an angel of God.
Who's Manoach?
Manoach is the father of Shimshon. Samson, the Gibor.
Mm-hmm.
So before Shimshon was born, so the angel came to Shimshon's father Manoach and his wife, Eshet Manoach. What's Eshet Manoach's name? Tzlel Ponit.
Oh, of course.
Okay, a fascinating name with fascinating power. Tzlel Ponit. I've actually renamed a woman Tzlel Ponit.
Huh.
Yes.
Power to cure?
Power for what specifically? When the person, it says, is gripped by a ruach ra'ah, by a spirit. So a terrible mental kind of disassociation. We had this case where a girl was, it was unbelievable. She kept trying to kill herself. The parents sent her somewhere. She was in the desert. They thought nothing could happen to her. She started swallowing rocks. Unbelievable. But she was almost like possessed by some sort of, terrible thing, trying to do terrible things to herself. And randomly I bumped into this rabbi, and the rabbi told me, you know something? There's a fascinating idea in Chazal that this name specifically is a name that saves a person from a ruach ra'ah.
So like an exorcism?
No exorcism. We just change the name. We changed her name. We changed this girl's name to Tzlel Ponit. Mm-hmm. After they changed the name to Tzlel Ponit, the therapists that were working with her in this place, in this retreat, realized that they had misdiagnosed her the whole time, and they were giving her the wrong treatment. They changed the treatment. Baruch Hashem, the girl's life was saved.
Wow.
She now has a family.
That's crazy.
Wow.
And the guy called me back when they found the thing.
You changed your name.
We changed the name
Wow.
out of Sefer Torah with a minyan.
Oh.
Yeah. Psycho story. But the story is even more psycho because it was random that I happened to be in this synagogue. And I went to the rabbi at the end, and I asked the rabbi, I was feeling so upset about this. I asked the rabbi, Rabbi, if you have to change a girl's name, what do you change a girl's name to? Like, is there like a go-to that you usually use? A big rabbi. He says, I don't know. He says, but let me tell you a story that I just happened to hear from my brother, also a big rabbi. My brother always says Divrei Torah, and I like to listen sometimes to Divrei Torah because he's very, very scholarly. This week, he didn't share Divrei Torah, he only told a story. And what did he tell a story about? He told a story about a rabbi who was once going to share Divrei Torah. Everyone came from far and near to hear him because he was a guest in the town. And when it came time for it, he could not remember any of the Divrei Torah that he prepared for this trip. Everyone's sitting there looking at him. It feels very awkward. So he says, you know what? Only thing he could remember was a story. He told a story about a rabbi. So now I'm a story in a story in a story. There was once a rabbi, and there was a scenario where this woman was about to die, and there was all sorts of problems. And they came to this rabbi, and the rabbi said, you should change the girl's name to Tzlel Poni. Why? Because that has the power to break a ruach ra'ah. So he says, I don't remember any Divrei Torah, so I'm going to share this with you. The rabbi who hears this in the story, who sees the rabbi do this, whatever, forget all of his Torah, is approached that day by a girl that they don't know what to do with her, and the situation is very dire, and he's just heard the rabbi not have a Divrei Torah tell a story. So he changed his name to Tzlel Poni, and it saved her life. So he says, that was the story that my brother shared today.
Wow.
And he says, and why did he share it today? Because they had a woman, who made a shivu'as. They swore that if the daughter would be saved, it was from this problem, they would name her a name from the parasha. And in this week's parasha, he said, there's no name of a woman. So what should I do? And the rabbi answered, this week the haftarah is the haftarah of Shimshon, and it mentions Eshet Manoach. Name the girl Tzlel Poni. So this rabbi is telling me this whole thing. He doesn't even know anything about the story. He just gives me this advice, which comes from a class from his brother.
Wow.
The class from his brother is about a rabbi who has a rabbi come to. It's a story and a story and a story and a story and a story. The guy messages me out of nowhere a couple months later. He says, "What was the name that you changed it to?" I said, "Why?" He says, "You're not going to believe it. They changed the diagnosis right after you changed the name. They changed the procedure about what they're doing with her. No one could believe that they got it wrong all this time." That's Tzlel Poni. Okay, coming back here. Eshet Manoach is visited by an angel. And she goes to her husband and she says, "I was just visited by an angel." So Manoach says that we better make our final preparations, because if you saw a divine apparition, that means you're going to die. What do we see? What was the whole long detour there? That you see in the story of Shimshon, that when a person saw something that was considered to be godly, they took it to mean that their time was over. Okay? So says the pasuk over here. Most people think that's what it means. A person can't.
Moshe Rabbeinu spent time with Hashem.
Yeah, Moshe Rabbeinu was very unique.
Okay.
Moshe Rabbeinu was the father of all Nevi'im, so to speak. Manoach is, so to speak, a regular guy. Okay? So we're seeing over here, a person can't see God and continue to live. That's a literal translation. But I want to give one more translation, which I think is very important, and that is, means that a person, not that a person can't see me because then he's going to die, but rather a person can't exist in this world, in its context, with its understanding, and see God. You can't simultaneously see, understand God, and also be a living being in this world. You don't have the perspective, you're not seeing what came before, what's going to come later, etc., etc. So the Gemara says explicitly, so therefore, it had to be that the size of the opening was only like the eye of a needle, so no one could see in. Because otherwise, the light, so to speak, that would have emanated from God's presence would have been catastrophic for everybody else. Gemara continues. Rabbi Chiba said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, what does it mean when it says, upon the luchot, right? Ve'alehem, it was all the words that HaKadosh Baruch Hu spoke with you on the mountain. We learn from here that HaKadosh Baruch Hu showed him all of the inner interpretations, all of the diukim and the dikdukim of Torah. So all the different things. How far down do we go? V'dikdukei sofrim, and all of the dikdukim, the interpretations and the understandings and the derivations that the Chachamim would make from Torah teachings in the future. Umash asofrin atidin lechadesh, and what all of those people, not only what was part of, so to speak, the body of the corpus of Torah, law and Mesorah, but rather, if Morris Misri comes up with an amazing chidush, HaKadosh Baruch Hu taught that chidush that Morris Misri would say in 2023. Hashem said to Moshe, this beautiful Mishnah over here, I just want you to know, the day is going to come in Wachtel Misri, okay? Wachtel Misri, okay? Misrei, Machtel Misrei, right? And he's going to say a chidush, you're not going to believe it, it's amazing. Brilliant chidush. And he's going to teach him this chidush. They asked the Gemara, what is this dikdukei sofrim? What understanding do we have from the Chachamim that was introduced? Answers the Gemara, Mikra Megillah. That refers to the reading of the Megillah. Now, it's interesting, this idea, because really, why of all things are we nailing Mikra Megillah to this? What about every other teaching of the Chachamim? Why did we choose this one thing over everything else? Not only that, you want to tell me you want derabanans, there's other mitzvot min derabanan and other gezerot. So why are we saying specifically Mikra Megillah was what was taught from Dikdukei Sofrim? I want to see if you guys have an insight into this. And if it's a good chidush, maybe Moshe Rabbeinu already heard it.
Fact.
Huh?
It's a fact.
Fact. What do we got? Why Mikra Megillah of everything else?
It's the only one that was not given, not the only one of the only ones that was not given to Moshe on Har Sinai, either in writing or in oral.
What do you mean? No, it was given.
The Megillah?
The Gemara over here is saying that we learned Dikdukei Sofrim also at Har Sinai. And how do we know it? Because it says that engraved on the Luchot were all the things. Kechol HaDevarim asher diber Hashem imachem. Bahar. Kechol HaDevarim means that God spoke many things. And like those things was on the Luchot. But God spoke many things to Moshe. What was included in those many things? All of the Torah, all of the diukim of the Torah, but not only the diukim, but also the diukim of the Chachamim, and even the chidushim that the Sofrim would come up with in the future. And the Gemara over here says, including Mikra Megillah. Why Mikra? What's Mikra Megillah got to do with anything? Why we choose that one to illustrate that the mitzvot midrabanan came here?
Is Megillah considered ketuvim?
Megillah is ketuvim, yeah.
Blew my theory.
Blew your theory, okay? So I have one answer.
Justify including the Megillah in the canon, because otherwise you might have thought that it wouldn't be included.
So in other words, really it could have said anything, and now we said that because you might have thought it wasn't. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. Right?
Were the Israelis attacked by Amalek yet?
At this point,
Yeah.
yes, they'd been attacked before they got to Har Sinai.
Okay, so it's probably correlated. Like, not only did you guys just beat Amalek, but it's gonna come back in the future. So it's probably gonna constantly be
And there
something that
wasn't,
you have to overcome.
and there wasn't a lesson in the future or in the history of the Jewish people that related to other mitzvot midrabanan. Why are we saying this one specifically? What does it mean? This chidush of the Chachamim? It means Dikdukei Sofrim.
What does innovate?
Innovate means that they'll almost come up with themselves.
What's a hadush?
So you're catching on the right spot,
You give up.
Morris. You caught the right spot. I don't know if you guys remember. If you remember when we learned earlier about the institution of the Megillah, we saw that the rabbis did not want to include the mitzvah of Mikra Megillah. They did not want to. And what happened? Esther prevailed upon them that it should be. So therefore the Gemara says over here that V'dikdukei Sofrim, even the things that the Sofrim would include in the later part, Says the Gemara, what do you mean even? What's being added there? Even something that the Chachamim did not want to include.
Great one.
So if you remember that Gemara, now you know why over here we had to specifically say this one. Because this was something the Chachamim did not want, but were willing to go along with. And you'd think that something the Chachamim didn't want would not be on Har Sinai. The answer is, yes, it's true. But if in the end they came around to Esther's way of thinking, that means that Esther must have been correct. So therefore, we're relating as well that was part of Diktukei Sofrim. I'm going to give you one last piece on this because it's fascinating. What else was Moshe Rabbeinu shown when we say this idea that he was given over all the diukim, the diktukim of the Torah? Anyone remember? There was one. Excellent. Excellent. At the top of the letters, they have in the Sefer Torah something called the tagim. The tagim are those little lines with a little ball at the top. You ever see? Out of the top of a sheen. So you have a sheen like this, and out of the top, you have those little hair thin line with circles. Looks like a crown.
What are those called?
Tagim.
Tagim?
Yeah.
He's on ChatGPT. That's his name.
That's why you don't need a Gemara. Nathan, Azak Baruch. Azak Baruch. He just showed us both hands, by the way. It looks exactly like a Rolex symbol, by the way.
Yeah.
Well done.
And Rabbi Akiva was the one coming up with all the Chidushim from the Tagim.
Oh,
That's what he didn't know that.
so Moshe Rabbeinu is shown. He's shown
as being the advanced
the
Gemara.
advanced. So Rabbi Akiva. So Moshe Rabbeinu is shown these crowns on top of the letters. He asks Hakadosh Baruch Hu, "What are these crowns? Why are they here?" In other words, after I already know everything, I don't know what these are. Hashem says, "I'm tying these crowns on the letters because a student is going to come." Okay, Ushmo Akiva, and his name is Akiva, and he's going to be able to interpret and to give dirashot, express and explain why there's crowns on each one of these letters. Moshe Rabbeinu understood that Rabbi Akiva was such a Torah scholar. Right here, he's getting private tutoring from God, but Rabbi Akiva doesn't have that. Right? He sees he's such a Torah scholar. You know what Moshe Rabbeinu says? Wow. Why don't you have him give the Torah? You see the level? Now, I just want to say, you have to take that with a grain of salt. Because Moshe Rabbeinu also said, when it came time to lead the Jewish people, why don't you have Aaron lead the people? Yeah. So Moshe is always Anav. He's always looking to not be the guy. But, at least on a surface level, you see that there was something that Moshe Rabbeinu did not understand that Rabbi Akiva did understand. So how do you reconcile that? If it says that he was taught everything, that every Torah Hidush was revealed to Moshe on Mount Sinai, so then how could it be that he didn't know what it was? Rabbi Akiva innovated that idea, but Moshe still should have seen it. And the answer is, he did. This is the seeing it. So I always saw the question that everyone asks on this, and I always thought to myself, yeah, but this is where he saw it. This is the conversation where God showed him the innovation of this Talmid Chacham. And at that point, Moshe Rabbeinu did not know it, but it was shown to him the limud that Rabbi Akiva was going to make from these tagim. I think there's something very warm, very special about that. The Gemara says, and like I said, I'll end with this. Gemara says that in Shamayim, the tzaddikim, they study Torah. And who do they study Torah with?
The Tzaddikim? Hashem?
Hashem. And the crazy thing is, you say it every day. Baruch Atah Hashem, HaMelamed Torah La'amo Yisrael. God teaches His nation the Torah. So God learns the Torah. But you know what they say in the heavenly court? Hashem says, Me'ir b'ni, Shimon b'ni, Kachu Omer. Shimon holds like this. Elazar b'ni, my son Elazar, he says like this. So he quotes, could you imagine you get to Shamayim, and Hashem is saying over, Morris b'ni, Nathan b'ni, ChatGPT. No, I'm joking. Okay, fine. Yeah, every chidush, ChatGPT is also going to come up with chidushim. Right? I don't know if they'll be true, but they'll be chidushim. All right? So it's special to know that your name is, so to speak, in God's mouth. And Hashem is sharing your chidush. You have to work, everyone here has to work very hard to be able to come up with an original, a novel Torah thought, so that your name, unlike Will Smith and Chris Rock, will be in God's mouth. Okay, let's move on. Says the Mishnah, Hakol kisherim. Everyone is. Sorry, I can't help myself sometimes. Hakol kisherim. Hakol kisherim likrot et Megillah. Everyone is qualified as kasher to read the Megillah. Chutz mecheresh, shoteh v'katan, except for they call them. I mean, it's a little bit bad because for us it means something and puts our mind on something else. It's called in the parlance of the Sfarim hashu, which just reminds you of machshi, right?
Yeah.
Hashu. Chet, that's an abbreviation for cheresh, someone who's deaf. Shoteh, someone who's mentally disturbed, who has not yet changed their name to tzlel ponit. And katan, someone who's under the age of being bar mitzvah. Okay, so
Women can read?
clearly from the Mishnah, yes, at least thus far. Okay, chutz micheresh shoteh v'katan. Everyone is qualified. Rabbi Yehuda machshiv v'katan. Rabbi Yehuda says, 1 second, you have hashu, I only have hash, because for me, I believe that actually a katan is allowed to read the Megillah, and it's not a problem.
Why doesn't it say a woman?
No, that's what he's saying. If it doesn't say a woman, it means that a woman's allowed to.
Who said that? Nathan?
Nathan,
Oh, I didn't hear it. Sorry.
right? He said, what about a woman? The answer is,
He's texting on the
No,
side.
I didn't hear it.
that's it, beautiful. Maris Beni, okay, fine. The Gemara says, now let's try.
You gotta show them.
Guys, his hands are up. His hands are up. Okay, so we have a machloket in the Mishnah. The Tanakh Kama says, Cheresh, Shoteh, Katan, not valid. Rabbi Yehuda says, no, Katan is valid. Now the Gemara is going to look into this idea of Cheresh. And what does it mean? Hakol kisherim. Everyone is kasher to read the Megillah, except for. Now, just let's be clear. What does the Mishnah not say? The Mishnah does not say, if Cheresh, Shoteh, Katan read the Megillah, lo yatsa. You did not fulfill your obligation. What does it say? It says everyone's kosher except for these. That might mean only in the first case. In other words, ideal scenario, you hear Cheresh Shoteh Katan, you have this guy ready to read, or a regular guy who's not Cheresh Shoteh Katan ready to read. Who do you choose? This guy's not kosher, go with this guy. What if you read and you didn't know until afterwards that the guy was Cheresh Shoteh Katan? You didn't know.
So you have to be for berachot and other stuff. Doesn't the person themselves need to be yotzeh?
We're not getting into berachot for right now. Let's
No, but
look.
wouldn't that be the same for Megillah? If someone is not would not be yotzeh, then
I'm not dividing the word Megillah into Megillah versus Berachot yet. Okay? So at this point though, we know that everyone's kasher except for these. Well, what does that mean? What if they already read? Does it mean that they're kasher? It's not kasher, but you still did it. You still you fulfilled your obligation, right? Or not? Gemara says as follows. Mantana cheresh di'avid nami lo. Do we have, and who is the Tana, the rabbi who holds that if a person heard already the Megillah from someone who cannot hear, a deaf person, right? Di'avad, he already did it. Still nami lo is still not valid. Gemara answers, Amar Rav Matna Rabbi Yossi. That's the opinion. The beginning of the Mishnah, which does not say the name of who the rabbi is. Who is that rabbi? It must be Rabbi Yossi. Ditanan, because we learned the Mishnah says Shema v'lo yishmeh le'ozno yatsa. If someone reads Shema, but he read Shema like this, he said all the words, mouthed all the words, but he didn't mouth them loud enough. He didn't say them loud enough that he could hear it with his own ears. So if someone read Shema and he did not let his ears hear, yatsa, he fulfilled his obligation. Rabbi Yossi Omer, Rabbi Yossi says, lo yatsa, you did not fulfill the obligation. So if that's the case, since Rabbi Yossi doesn't say kasher, not kasher, he says lo yatsa, that means that even if he already did it that way, still lo yatsa. And if he holds that when one doesn't hear their reading, they haven't fulfilled their obligation, so a cheresh, someone who can't hear, de facto did not hear his own reading.
Why does that negate the person who's hearing him read? If
Well-
the person who's reading can't hear, but I hear the person reading, wouldn't I be the one who would be your
how can you hear if you can't hear
So
yourself?
one more.
If he's deaf,
Yeah.
this is talking about a deaf person, not a person who's reading low. The deaf person can't hear himself, but I can hear the deaf person.
At this point, it's clear that the Gemara is operating under the assumption that it can't be that he's not fulfilling his own chiyuv, and he's going to fulfill mine.
So if he can't fulfill his, he can't possibly fulfill mine.
That's the assumption the Gemara is working
That's
with.
Can a
what I was
deaf
saying
person
before.
make kiddush?
Since when could a deaf person speak properly?
Why? I have a friend who's deaf who can speak without it.
Yeah.
Very rarely
Yeah.
that they speak in a way which is you can't tell at all. But there are some deaf people that speak very intelligibly.
Fully
know?
deaf?
It's hard unless you have
He
some
had a
type of
cochlear implant.
device.
He removes the implant. He speaks at the same level.
My uncle,
of his
my uncle Morrison Alleners, he's fully deaf basically, and he has
Can he
same
make
thing, whispers
kiddush?
to his thing. I don't know.
So again, let's not branch out
Oh,
yet.
sorry.
At this point, we have cheresh katan. It says that they're not kosher. The Gemara says maybe that means that if they did it, you still didn't fulfill the obligation, even after the fact. The Gemara tries to bring a proof that this would be the opinion of Yossi, because when it says if a person reads Shema and they don't hear their own words, they haven't fulfilled their obligation. If that's the case, so then that would be the case here too, because the cheresh can't hear his own words. He can't hear his own words. He's not fulfilled his obligation, even b'diavad, even after the fact. So, and the Gemara is operating under the assumption that if he's not yotzeh, it can't be that he's not yotzeh his own reading, and you fulfill your obligation by listening to his reading. The Gemara continues. The Gemara says, "Umimai, who said? You just assumed that that's how this works. Umimai de Rabbi Yossi, why did you imagine that this Tana is according to the opinion of Rabbi Yossi? And vidyavad namilo, and vidyavad, you did not fulfill your obligation, right? Who told you that? Dilma Rabbi Yehudahi. Maybe the beginning of our Mishnah is going according to Rabbi Yehuda. V'lechatchila hu delo, and when the Gemara says, when the Mishnah says that a deaf person is not kasher, it means you don't go to them in the first place. Hadiavad shapridami, but if not, it's fine. Okay? The Gemara says lo sal kadaitach. That can't be. Why? De katani cheresh dumya de shotev katan. Because since we grouped these three people together, someone who's deaf, someone who is really mentally incapacitated, and someone who is a katan, which does not have a valid dot, therefore, if that's the case, ma shotev katan di'avad nami lo. If shotev katan, obviously, you're not fulfilling your obligation because they don't have the knowledge to be able to know that they're even doing the mitzvah, okay? The shoteh because he is not mentally present, and the katan because his knowledge doesn't create any halachic status because he's a child. If that's the case, the avad nami lo afcheresh. If you grouped this one with those other two, it must be that they have the same law. So from that grouping, afcheresh the avad nami lo, so also cheresh also must not be. So that's why we assumed that when it says cheresh is not kosher, it means even after the fact. Gemara says, "V'dilma ha kidiita, v'ha kidiita." Maybe the reason is right that even though they're together, this one is like according to its halachot, this one's according to this halacha. They're unified in the case that I'm talking about. Let me give you an example. Let's say I tell you, stealing a stamp by putting too little postage on the stamp is illegal. And killing a person is also illegal. So the fact that I say killing someone and not putting proper postage are both illegal, does that mean that the punishment for them is going to be the same?
No.
No. I'm saying I'm drawing this collusion of these two things. They're thick as thieves with regards specifically to the one element, not with regards to the other element. So maybe cheresh shotev katan, we're telling you they're not kosher with regards to an ideal scenario, but when it comes to the back end, i.e. what happens if I heard from them already, then they have different laws. And then it could still be going according to Rabbi Yehuda. The Gemara says, let's try another proof. Now this is astounding to me. Mida katani sefer, the end of the Mishnah says, Rabbi Yehuda machshir bekatan. Rabbi Yehuda says that a katan is kosher. Michlal deresh alav Rabbi Yehuda. Obviously, the beginning can't be Rabbi Yehuda. It's like saying, I hold, or right, the law is that you can't take a shower on the holiday. And Rabbi, Flubenschlaben, he holds that you can take a shower on the holiday. Obviously, the first memra, the first part was not him because he's in the end and he argues. So in our Mishnah, we had Hashu is not kosher.
Right.
Then comes Rabbi Yehuda, like Rabbi Yehuda says, hold up, objection, Your Honor. And what does he say? The minor is included. That must mean that the beginning is not Rabbi Yehuda, right? The Gemara says, Mi dami, maybe the reason, V'dil ma'kulak Rabbi Yehuda, maybe, why are you saying that the beginning, it cannot be Rabbi Yehuda? V'dil ma'kulak Rabbi Yehuda, maybe the whole Mishnah is Rabbi Yehuda. Mi dami resha lepsula, v'sefa l'chshera. Who says that they're both true with regard? What's it called? They're both true with regard. They're contradictory. Maybe they're not contradictory. Now, in what way would they not be contradictory?
When they say the same thing.
Sorry?
When they say the same thing.
In what way would they not be contradictory? So, where would that case be? Look at Rashi for 1 second, right in the middle, okay? Sefer Rabbi Yehuda. The Katan Rabbi Yehuda machshir bekatan. Lo dami resha lepsula v'sefa le'achshira lo garsinan. Rashi cuts those words right out of the text of the Gemara. The lishna yiterai, it's just an extra line. It's more extended verbiage. Elahachi garsinan. This is the correct text of the Gemara. V'dilma Rabbi Yehuda v'trei gavni. And there's two kinds of katan. V'chisure mechsera. And it's missing out an explanation. Now let's go back to the Gemara.
Maybe the minor is deaf or deranged,
Okay.
but not really just a regular minor.
So are you saying that that's the two kinds of minor?
You said, how could it be similar, right? Isn't that the question?
Yes.
They're both talking about the same minor.
So the answer is that the second one is another kind of minor.
Yeah.
Excellent. So that's what the Gemara answers. Brilliant. So the Gemara answers, Nida miresh lepsula, Maris v'ni kach omer, right? Nida miresh lepsula v'sefer l'chsher. How could it be? Yeah, maybe the whole things. V'trei gavni katan katan. There's two types of below bar mitzvah minors. The Mishnah is abbreviated, but if you would want to understand what it means, if you want me to express it, clearly, it should read like this: Hakokshin in the Krota Megillah. Everyone's holding by reading the Megillah, except for these three. When is this said that all three of these are not kosher? A katan that already is not part of the age, or did not yet reach the age where he's in the obligation to start teaching him about the mitzvot. But when it comes to a katan that has reached that age, but in other words, but he's not bar mitzvah yet. Okay, he could read the Megillah even in as a best case scenario. Okay,
So he's trained in a certain way.
Should Rabbi Yehuda machshir bekatan, because Rabbi Yehuda allows a katan to be able to read the Megillah. So let's just recap. The Mishnah says, I have a beginning and an end. The beginning says chashu is not kosher. Rabbi Yehuda comes along and says katan is kosher. The Gemara says, okay, who's this opinion? And what do they hold? Do they hold this in the first case, or even in a worst case? In a best case or worst case? The Gemara says, well, if it's worst case, who would that be? Gemara finds who it could be. Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi says, if you said Shema and you didn't hear it, you didn't fulfill your obligation. Oh, perfect. So Cheresh, who can't hear himself, that's the opinion of Rabbi Yossi, and it means that even if you heard from them b'di'evet, you still did not fulfill your obligation. Gemara says, who told you? Maybe it means lechatechila. The Gemara says, well, who would that be? The Gemara answers, it's Rabbi Yehuda. Yes, the Gemara, if it's Rabbi Yehuda is the end. The Gemara says, you're right. The Mishnah is an abbreviated type of a speech. It's saying, chashu is no good. Rabbi Yehuda says, but, let me tell you, I am machshir bekatan. I hold that a katan is kosher. It's just that when a katan is too katan, he can't be kosher. But not that there's a katan in and of itself that's an exclusion from being able to read. So if you have, what would be the difference? The difference is if a katan reached chinuch. So Jonah is asking a good question. What kind of chinuch does he need to reach? Rav Shlomo Zalman rules that when it comes to chinuch, the age of chinuch of a child is mitzvah dependent.
It's like zimun age, like if he's 10 and we say.
So like a younger age for birkat hamazon. Why? Your kid gets up. If he doesn't say thank you mom for lunch, You know, you get him a salami. I'll whip you upside the head with a salami. Who remembers that? Phone scams. Nobody? All right? So, in such a case, right, you expect the kid to say thank you for a meal. So, it's not that far to think that the kid could understand he's got to say thank you to Hashem. That's a relatively young age. How about a sophisticated mitzvah? That requires a much higher level of maturity for a child. So, that would be a higher age of chinuch. And under that age, for that mitzvah, there's no chinuch. I'm going to give you an unbelievable chidush. I recently talked about this Pnei Yehoshua that talks about how the Shammai held that if a person can, they should even take a baby that was just born and he should sit in the sukkah. And everybody jumps on Shammai. They're like, what's the point? Even chinuch for a child, it's got to be at a point where the kid is learning how to behave. This is a baby, 5 seconds old. Don't even remember. What's the point of the chinuch? So
Give zechut to the people that bring their kids to shul in baby carriages.
one answer.
It's ingrained.
Second answer is ingrained. Listen to this. Third answer. Ready for this?
Gilgul.
Oh, that's a nice one.
I like that one.
I like that one. Right, he's an old soul, literally and figuratively. I want to blow your minds. Ready for this? When it comes to a mitzvah of Megillah, Birkat HaMazon, Lulav, so what's the age that you need to be in order to fulfill the mitzvah? At some point, you need to be old enough to be able to do it. How old enough do you have to be to exist in a place?
Get to be there.
A second old.
Yeah, that was good.
That was the chidush of that class. That's not this. This is different. What's the mitzvah of a sukkah? Just being in it. How old do you have to be somewhere? 0 days old. So Shammai holds the age of chinuch for sukkah is instantaneous.
Wow.
That's fascinating chidush.
That's a great one.
Okay, let's continue.
But we don't hold by him, right?
The Gemara says it's a chumrah.
Really?
Yeah, but if it's recorded in the Gemara, that means that it's a something. Like, it doesn't mean you have to do it. But like I mentioned it the other day in the shiur, that sometimes I go to a house and they'll tell me, oh, your kids, your wife, they don't have to see in the sukkah. They say, I'd rather not be here. I'd rather be home where they could do it. Now, they don't have the obligation. That's true. But that's how we treat mitzvot, that we only do mitzvot that we're obligated to do. This is zechut. You get to do this mitzvah. You don't have to do it. So you know what? I'll come to you another Shabbat. I don't want to come now when my wife and kids are not going to be in the sukkah. Even if they're not obligated. Okay. So let's continue.
Quick question.
Yes?
Do we learn anything by their not mentioning blind and mute not being kasher?
So the Gemara mentions Suma and Ilem in different cases. But for right now, we do not hold that they are a problem. At least according to this Mishnah. Okay?
Well, how can a mute?
Sorry?
How can a mute?
So
Read the
Harry,
Megillah.
Harry's asking a good question. How can a mute person read a Megillah? And I have a better question. If you have to read a Megillah from a Megillah, how can a Suma read a Megillah? You have to read it from a text, we said, 50 times.
Yeah.
So you can't read it from the Megillah if he's blind. The answer to that, I think, is what we just learned.
Who said blind?
What did we just learn?
Nathan.
Nathan asked, what about someone who's blind? What about someone who can't speak? Someone who can't speak can't read the Megillah because they can't read. Fine, granted. Someone who's blind also can't read the Megillah. Why?
Just learn 'cause you
Can't
have
see.
to
You have
read
to
it.
read it from a text.
Right.
Yeah, I have a simple answer. There is now, right now, there is a technology that you could put on someone's eyes, which is connected directly to their brain. The glasses are seeing the sight, connecting with the optical nerve,
Wow.
creating the images in the guy's brain. The guy can see the text, but he's still a summa.
You don't say.
No.
If a summa is allowed, it's hard to argue that he's reading the text.
What's Suma?
Summa is someone who's blind.
Yeah.
Same thing with Ilem. You have a scenario where a person physically is Ilem, but we've figured out how to be able to create the sounds by using some other form of speech. Would that be considered Ilem? So maybe in modern technology, one would have to address if a Suma and an Ilem could read a Megillah. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay? All right. Let's carry on. The Gemara, we're going to end, we'll just end in just a couple minutes with this. Okay? The Gemara says, B'mayu kimta ki Rabbi Yehuda, v'diavad. So how did we just come out? The way we just came out is that the opinion is according to Rabbi Yehuda, that's where the Mishnah is going, both the beginning and the end. V'di'avad, and we're talking about even if a person already heard the Megillah, right? And right, if that's how you hold, Elahadetani Rabbi Yehuda B'red Rabbi Shimon ben Pazi. If that's the case, when Rabbi Yehuda, the son of Rabbi Shimon ben Pazi, he learned Cheresh Amedaber Ve'eno Shomea. If you have a cheresh, a deaf person who's medaber, who speaks Ve'eno Shomea.
Yes.
1 second, you need to mute your phone. Someone, okay? Cheresh Amedaber Ve'eno Shomea. Someone who's a cheresh, who's deaf, who could speak, but ve'eno shomea, because there's some charashim that can't speak and they can't hear. Okay? So, cheresh hamedaber ve'eno shomea, torem lechatechila, the Gemara says, he's able to do teruma even lechatechila. So let's say you have a guy who's separating teruma from people from the vegetables. You have to separate a portion of your fruits and vegetables for terumot and maasrot. So let's say he does teruma lechatechila, cheresh hamedaber ve'eno shomea. So if he could only not hear, but he could speak, he's still chayav in the mitzvah. Who holds that? Sorry?
Why are we talking about teruma?
Well, we're going to see in a minute. Mani, who holds that, Rabbi Yehuda, if you're going according to Rabbi Yehuda, can't be. De'avid in lechatechila lo. Because Rabbi Yehuda holds that b'di'evid, the cheresh is allowed to do the mitzvah. Not lechatechila. Okay? But in the first place, so it would not be that way. So then how could it be with regards to teruma that we would say that he's allowed to do it lechatechila? And the Gemara is assuming, at least for this point, in the Gemara, that the mitzvot, they kind of go together. Like, if teruma is that way, then Shema would be that way. And if Shema is not that way, then teruma would not be that way. So therefore, if that's the case, that we have Rabbi Yehuda seems to be saying that his halacha is even lechatechila, not b'di'evid. So now we're back to where we were in the Mishnah before. Because if that's what Rabbi Yehuda holds, right, that a cheresh is good lechatechila, he can't be the first part of the Mishnah. The only way he can be the first part of the Mishnah is if he holds that it's lechatechila no good, b'di'evid yes good. But if he holds that lechatechila is also good, then the first part of the Mishnah can't be him saying cheresh, shoteh v'katan are not kosher. Gemara says Rabbi Yossi, and if he follows, if you want to say that the Mishnah is Rabbi Yossi, it also doesn't work. Why? Because the Avad Namilo. Rabbi Yossi also holds, when it comes to Shema, that if you said the Shema and you did not hear what you said, right? Lo yatsa, even b'di'evid. So if that's the case, when it comes to Tiruma, right? What would Rabbi Yossi hold for a cheresh shoteh v'katan? If a person was cheresh, he would hold even b'di'evid. It's no good. If that's the case, so if now we have these things set up that way, so it turns out that what does Rabbi Yehuda hold lechatechila? It must be that Rabbi Yehuda holds that Shema is kosher even lechatechila.
But Shema, you have an obligation to hear, and Megillah, I have an obligation to hear. Teruma, I don't have to hear anything. Why would you bring that in?
So again, at this point, the Gemara is holding that they're all the same.
At this point.
Turn the page or something.
At this point, okay? At this point. So therefore, the Rabbi Yehuda that says, the Rabbi Yehuda that says that the cheresh can separate the teruma, even lechatechila, even in the best case scenario, right? Now where are we? So now we have a problem, because if that's the case, then our Mishnah can't go according to Rabbi Yossi, and it can't go according to Rabbi Yehuda. Gemara says, that can't be. Why? Let's explain. Ve'elamai, Rabbi Yehuda, afilu lechatchila. If you hold that the Mishnah is Rabbi Yehuda and even lechatchila, that they can fulfill their obligation. Ilaha detanya, right? In other words, by Shema, ilaha detanya. When we learn in the Braita lo yavarech adam berkat hamazon b'libo, a person can't make berkat hamazon by themselves in their heart. In other words, without speaking the words out. But if you did it, the berkat hamazon, quietly to yourself without even hearing your own words, you fulfill your obligation. Mani, lo Rabbi Yehuda, lo Rabbi Yossi. Let's review. Here's a guy who said berkat hamazon. He did not hear berkat. He's just doing this. No words, no sounds coming out. It says over here, b'di lechatechila no, b'di avad yes. Rabbi Yehuda you're saying even lechatechila, yes, because that's what it says by Tiruma, then it can't be Rabbi Yehuda over here because he says lechatechila no. And if you hold Rabbi Yossi says even b'diavad no, then it can't be Rabbi Yossi either because it says b'diavad it's good. Do you understand? We keep boxing ourselves in with a problem.
Yeah.
Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yehuda were assuming that all these mitzvot are the same, so they have to have one uniform halacha across everything. Either it's always good, best case and worst case, or it's always bad, best case and worst case, right? Those are the two options that we're finding. Why? Because we have specific brightot. One by Shema, one by Teruma, that say parallel opposites. So if we're going to say one is Rabbi Yossi and one is Rabbi Yehuda, then our Mishnah is the sacrifice here because it can't be either of them. All right? So the Gemara says, Mani, so who is the Braita? Lo Rabbi Yehuda, lo Rabbi Yossi. It's not Rabbi Yehuda and not Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yehuda fil lechatechila. If it's Rabbi Yehuda, then it should be good even lechatechila. Birkat Hamazon. Rabbi Yossi, if it's Rabbi Yossi, I feel b'diavad namilo. Rabbi Yossi should hold even b'diavad. No, because he says by Shema lo yatsa. Leolam the Gemara says Rabbi Yehuda. The Braita of Tiruma, which says that you could do it even the chatechila, is Rabbi Yehuda. V'afil lechatechila. V'lo kasha. It's not a problem. Why? When it comes to the Braita of Birkat Hamazon, where the Gemara over there said by Birkat Hamazon that if you say it in your heart, it's not good lechatechila, but it is good b'diavad. Hadidei, hadirabe. That one is Rabbi Yehuda saying over his own opinion, and one is Rabbi Yehuda saying over the opinion of his rabbi. So when it says Rabbi Yehuda says in the name of Rabbi Shimon ben Pazi, he's not telling you what he holds. He's saying over what his rabbi holds. But elsewhere, Rabbi Yehuda is entitled to his own opinion. He's allowed to argue on the opinion of a fellow Tana, even if that Tana is his rabbi. You got it? The Tanya. And now we're going to see this opinion of the Rabbi Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Mishum Elazar ben Azariah. Rabbi Yehuda says the name of Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. Hakoret Shema tzarich shmiya leoznot. He needs to hear it with his ears. Shneimar, like it says, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. Someone asked me this. I told you we would get back to it later. How do you know you have to read Shema out loud? Because the pasuk says Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. This where do we learn that? What do we learn from that? Hashma leoznecha mashtam etzem bivicha. Let your ears hear that which is coming out of your mouth, because it says Shema Yisrael. Rabbi Meir Omer Meir says Asher Anochi Mitzavach Hayom Al Levavecha. But the next pasuk in Shema says, I'm commanding you today that it should be on your heart. What does that mean? It seems like that the idea of whether or not you said it is dependent on the heart, not on whether or not you heard the words. Because it says Al Levavecha, on your heart. If that's the case, we have two opinions, Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, that Rabbi Yehuda is saying over. Rabbi Yehuda is saying over the opinion of his rabbi, which says that you must hear it with your ears. And over here, we're hearing the opinion of Rabbi Meir. That Rabbi Meir, disagrees. So now that we have this new opinion in the mix, brought by Rabbi Akiva, the opinion of his rabbi, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, now that we are where we are, now that you want to tell me that even if Rabbi Yehuda holds like his rabbi, Rabbi Elazar, who says that a person should hear the words, but if he doesn't, he fulfills obligation. And when it says Rabbi Yehuda, the son of Rabbi Shimon ben Pazi, which teaches us the law specifically with regards to Tirumah, that opinion is the opinion of Rabbi Meir. So now I have a way to weasel out of applying that Gemara, that Mishnah to Rabbi Yehuda. So the Gemara says, you tried to answer me that Rabbi Yehuda has a rabbi that says something else, and while you did that, you gave me another answer, you gave me more ammo, because you found me another opinion, the opinion of Rabbi Meir, that says that it's lichatechila, you don't even have to hear words. Once I have the opinion of Rabbi Meir, so that braita that says that you in the name of Yehuda that you don't have to hear anything, that's going to be Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Yehuda holds like his rabbi, which says that you have to hear. But what kind of have to hear? Half. Lichatechila, no. Diavad, yes. So now we're all clear, and the opinion of the Mishnah is all Rabbi Yehuda. The Gemara ends on this. We'll finish to the Mishnah. Rabbi Yehuda says that a katan is okay. What does that mean? Titania, I'm Rabbi Yehuda. Katan haiti, I was a minor. I myself was under the age of bar mitzvah. And I read the Megillah for Rabbi Tarfon and all of the elders. So what do you see from that? It must be that he's a katan and still he's able to read. And that's Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. Amrulo, they told him, En mevin raya min katan.
It says in the Torah.
You can't bring a proof from a katan. Who saw the episode? You did.
Yeah.
You're a katan. You're saying a witness. You're bearing witness about something that happened when you were a minor. So we can't bear witness from the fact that they didn't do it because you were a katan. Okay, I always thought this Gemara was quite tongue in cheek, but I also feel like it's more than just that he's not valid as a witness. It's like maybe they didn't say anything to you because you were a katan.
But it says that the Shema, it says teach it to your children so they should carry it with you. It clearly says that.
Okay.
Shema, so maybe how do you teach it to your children? You can't whisper to your children.
That's a separate commandment, though. It
Okay.
says Shema Hashem Elokeinu Hashem
Or
Echad.
are we finding
You have to hear
shouldn't-
this. And these words should be on your heart. And in other words, and another
In
thing
your
you should do.
homes, and you should teach to your children
And
as you wake up.
but
and
that's
go out.
another thing.
Additional.
Like in
Okay.
other words, we don't say you have to say Shema while you're standing by the doorpost because it says Amezuzot Betecha.
Right.
That's another mitzvah in the
I got
Shema.
it.
Okay, so maybe the reason why we're saying you can't bring a proof from the minor is because they didn't say anything to you because you were a kid. You know, sometimes you have a kid who wants to read. What do? We get the kid to read, then we get the chazan to read it again.
Right.
So maybe that's what it means. Amrulo emivin raya min katan. The Gemara now, Titania, the Braita says, Rebbe says, Katan haiti v'kriti l'malam Rebbe Yehuda. The Rebbe says, I read the Megillah from Rebbe Yehuda. Amrulo emivin raya min matir. You can't prove that you're right from yourself. You understand?
Yeah.
We have someone who's bringing the proof from someone who holds that the katan is. So you're trying to convince us. Don't use yourself or the rabbi who holds that way as a proof to your concept. We want to see that it's widespread proof, not just that the person who says it is holds that way. Gemara says, so v'lemrule. Why didn't they say emevin raya min katan? Why don't we just answer him the first answer, which is not you can't bring a proof from yourself, but you can't bring a proof because you were young. You were less than a bar mitzvah. Hada ve'od ka'amru. The Gemara answers, we had two answers. So we gave him one. Now, we gave him another answer. Chada de katan ayita. First answer is that you were a katan, and we can't bring a proof. Ve'od afilu gadol ayita. And not only that, even if you were someone that was already above the age of bar mitzvah, you can't bring a proof from the person himself who holds that way. It's kind of like, my son-in-law always talks about this. Sometimes you have rabbis, they say, look, this is the halakha. And if you look carefully, you'll see that Yabia Omer says it. You wrote Yabia Omer. You can't bring a proof to yourself from a book that you wrote. And that, therefore, would be the case even by a gadol.